Hey guys, it's Shen here and welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be taking you through a step-by-step process of how we recreated this magazine cover from Harper's Bazaar. So the first thing you want to do with the image is to tidy up any imperfections. You can do this by clicking J in Photoshop or using the healing tool. Find it from the panel on the left. So we're just going to go through and just take out any of these imperfections on the skin. Very much just a skin retouching process to begin with. Yep, just going to speed it up here. Make sure you keep away from the highlights. You don't want to flatten the image. You want to keep the highlights and the lighting as natural as possible without making it too unrealistic. Effectively, this is to enhance the work of the makeup artist rather than doing everything from scratch. You can use the combination of the stamp tool as well, which is S on the keyboards, or you can see it's just two below the healing tool on the left panel. Difference between stamp tool and healing tool, I feel the stamp tool has a lot more control. You pick exactly where you want to select from. If you press Alt and click in a specific area, you'll be able to copy that kind of texture and move it across to wherever you want to replace. It's a lot more controlled than the healing tool, which uses the content awareness feature on Photoshop. And most of the time it does work, but occasionally you want a bit more control, you want a bit more detail, so you'd use the stamp tool just to finish up. So the next step is to smooth the skin. You've got rid of all your imperfections on the skin. Now it's time to take it to that next step. What you want to do is create a duplicate layer of the layer that you've already been working with, which is Control J. Next you want to invert that image, which is Command or Control I. It looks a bit scary to start with, but I promise it'll be all fine in the end. You want to click on Vivid Light from the Layers panel on the right. It brings up this grey image. You can kind of see the outline of the face. So next you want to go to Filters and go down to Other and click on High Pass. This will bring back the image from the inverted, and you want to click around. I tend to use 24 pixels. You might go either side just by a bit. Just kind of creates this smooth look. So it loses the detail slightly, but this is where the next step comes in. You want to go to Blur and you want to go down to Gaussian Blur. You can kind of see where the detail's already gone. You don't want to go too high up to the hundreds. You want to stick around maybe between 2 to 4, depending on the level of detail you want to bring back. Just have a look at the image and you can kind of see it's very smooth, and everything is kind of blurred out a bit, obviously because you've just clicked on the blur tool. If you go down to the layers panel again, you'll see the mask tool. What you want to do is click Alt and create that inverse mask, which will bring up a black panel. You want to make sure that's selected, and this will allow you to bring back detail from that blurred image as the separate layer. So you want to go ahead, click on Brush and kind of select out where the contrast is still quite high. You want to smoothen out the parts of the face where the skin is kind of a bit too contrasty. You want to smoothen out. Tend to stay away from highlights still, but I just tend to avoid the upper part of the lip, above the lip between the nose and the lip. I like to make sure the forehead is smooth, the cheeks are smooth, the chin is smooth, and sometimes around the neck area as well, so that it's matching between the neck and face. Don't worry if you feel like it's too smooth. You are bringing back that previous layer where it looked a lot smoother than it should. So the next step would be to select the opacity. This obviously will be up to you on how much you actually want to bring through or not. You can kind of see if I go down to about 50%, that should be enough, and you can kind of see it's only a very subtle difference, but it's kind of a difference that I notice personally, and I think it's kind of an invisible detail where people don't really pick up on it. It's not so obviously smooth, but it's not so raw as if it's come out of the camera. So once we've done that, the next step you can either save it or you can just merge the layers together. The next step would be to just tidy up the exposure, mess around with that. If you go to the filter, you can bring up the camera raw tool, which is also Command Shift A, I think. So I like to bring in some contrast, increase the clarity ever so slightly just to bring in a bit more detail. You also want to you can mess around with the shadows, make the contrast, just adds to the contrast a bit more. And vibrance rather than saturation. You don't want to overdo it too much by bringing so much color in. You can also go to the hues panel where you can kind of change individual colors. I like to mess around with oranges as well, just to highlight a bit more of the skin color. So yeah, let's mess around with red. The lips tend to be a red color rather than oranges. And you can see this pink jacket as well is under the red column. So yeah, we're just going to bring that ever so slightly up. The luminance panel obviously is how bright the color is going to be, rather than saturation, which tends to deal with the amount of color. The luminance deals with the exposure of the color. So you can kind of see the differences there. So the next step in recreating this image, I want to focus on the eyeshadow. In the raw image it's blue, but I want to kind of accentuate that blue, bring that color right out, and just tidy up the colors and highlights around it. So I'm going to select the lasso tool, which you can find up here. Make sure it's the second option, where you're controlling the lines itself rather than the magnetic tool, which does everything automatically. Just going to select very roughly the shape that I want it to be. Kind of goes right up to the eyebrow. And next you want to feather. So feather it around 150, or you can see it kind of blurred it a bit too much. You kind of want to get the general shape. This blurs the edges, makes it not so blocky. From that, so let's say 100 pixels, you can just zoom in, have a look, and when I increase the details, you can kind of see it doesn't really increase with a hard edge. It kind of blurs everything together, so it does give it a natural look. We're going to bring up levels, and we're going to just mess around with the exposure slightly more. You can kind of see where the edges go. Next, I want to bring on the color, so we're going to bring up the color balance tool, which is Command B, and I'm going to try and match that eyeshadow color from the original magazine cover. So we'll try a bit of cyan, try a bit of blue. It's not looking too bad. Just want to bring in more of a cyan color. It's more towards sky blue. And already we can see how the edges are starting to come in, keeping that same texture of the skin. So it's not so much a stamp tool where you're bringing in the color. It's more of you're just changing the hue of the existing texture. So we can have a look at that. It's not looking too bad. You can kind of see the difference there. Just highlights the color slightly more. I'm going to tidy up the lips slightly as well. You can kind of see the color isn't as pink. Just want to make it slightly more pink by using the same technique, using the polygonal lasso tool. Just going to roughly highlight the lips area, take out the teeth. Just to deselect, you press Alt and select. Then I'm going to feather the same, not so much because it's a smaller area I'm working with, maybe 50. And we're just going to mess around with the color slightly again. Hue and saturation panel is Command U. And it's just bringing out the saturation ever so slightly. And now we're just going to change that color. So the next step, and final step hopefully, is to change the background. Now this is always quite a tough one because you've got hair everywhere. Selecting the fine bits between the hair is always going to be tough because the color comes through. And so we're going to use a technique I recently learned. So we're going to start with duplicating the layer just to protect the original image. This is, not destructive editing where you're kind of saving over everything you're doing, which isn't practical because there have been times where I've done 3 hours on a piece and you just save it and close it in the wrong resolution and you've kind of lost everything there. So you want to protect your image. Again, duplicate layers, Control J or Command J. And next you want to create a new layer. Bring that layer beneath the existing layer 1, which is going to be the top, and create a really bright color. So we're going to go for red. Let's use that bright red. Next you want to go to the paint bucket tool, which is on the left, or G, or select it, or change it if it's the gradient tool selected, and you're just going to click, making sure layer 2 is selected. Click off layer 1 and you can see that the red color is there. Next you want to go to the eraser tool. Clicking and holding the eraser tool, you can see that there is a background eraser tool. We're going to make sure that the options are selected to discontiguous and the tolerance is around 50, and make sure that protect foreground color is selected. So then we're going to click on layer 1 and we're going to slowly select the area around the hair. You want to make sure the background color first of all is selected to the existing, or as close to the existing background color at the moment. Next you can kind of see if I erase that, very slowly erases it. So you want to select around the hair, kind of very slowly pick it out, and hopefully the protect foreground color will keep the hair intact. So you just want to go around the edges very slowly. It will take out some of the stray hairs, which is fine. You just want to go all around. And as you can see, it kind of goes into the face. We want to avoid that. Just make sure, just keep it to the hair. It's very slow. Lower the, decrease the brush, the eraser size if needed. It's only rough you really need to do, but hopefully it should look something like that. So next you just want to select the rest and just delete the rest. Using the lasso tool again, just going to delete everything. The big chunks around outside of the hair don't really matter, but once you've deleted the background from layer 1, you could see layer 2 come through. Effectively you're working on a manual mask pretty much. So we're going to bring in the reference image here, and we're going to select using eye, or click on the eyedrop tool on the left, or just click on the main color, and we're just going to select that color just to recreate that. Just get rid of that layer, and then we're going to go to layer 2, and we're just going to fill in color using the paint bucket tool again, and that's not looking too bad. So you can kind of see where the background has been cut out from layer 1. And we've still got these stray hairs, so obviously we're just going to go through and select the normal eraser tool and just tidy that up, get rid of that. Just going to tidy up any imperfections, and yeah, there we go. That's pretty much done. You can kind of see before and after how it's gone. It's not such a massive difference once you realize how much work goes into it, but the subtle differences definitely make a difference. So that's it for this video. I hope you've managed to learn a few tricks and tips when it comes to editing and smoothing out skin. Stay tuned, I've done another one recreating a magazine cover, so hopefully I'll be able to bring that to you soon. Don't forget to subscribe and visit my Instagram channel and the Makeup and Models Instagram channel. I'll link it in the description below, and yeah, see you in the next video.